everyone, welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah. Today we are revisiting a book that I read a long time ago, and to preface that, I would just like to say that when I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had two things on my mind: Paul Newman and A Way Home. If you haven't guessed, yes, I have had that memorized for many years. Yes, from the title and the thumbnail, we are talking about The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This book, I read this book in high school. I think I read it multiple times in high school because I really enjoyed it. And recently I just decided, hey, let's revisit it. Let's see if I still like it as much as I did then. Now, before we actually get into a summary, synopsis, that sort of thing, I know what kind of student I was in high school who read this book multiple times as a class requirement. I also know what people like my hubby were like in high school. So let me just say, this summary will not be enough to get you through an English class. You have to read the book. Okay, got that out of the way because I know there are probably at some point, I mean, not that that many people are watching this, but who knows, maybe somebody's digging around trying to find a quick way out of reading this book. You just have to read it. Okay, so anyway, we'll do just a very quick summary and then I'll get into spoilers, my thoughts, all of that stuff. Though, I mean, this is a book, I feel like a lot of people know this book, so I'm not sure why I'm bothering to do a quick summary, but we'll do it anyway, just in case. So this is the story of a group of greasers, which are just greasy. They use hair grease. They are, not financially all that well off. The main character, Ponyboy, he and his friend Johnny Cade get themselves into a tough situation and are forced to kind of run away. And it is just kind of all about the dynamics, the friendship dynamics, the societal dynamics, and yeah, just kind of all of that stuff. I mean, I don't want to really say anything because I feel like the main plot points are the spoilers, kind of. Okay, yeah, I just reread the back of the book and it doesn't, the things that I avoided, the back of the book avoids. So I guess that's a good sign. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. So we'll go ahead and kind of dive into all of the juicy plot details with this book. Starting with just a little bit about the different groups in this book. So pretty early on, we're introduced to the socs and we're introduced to the greasers. The socs are the group that they're just wealthier, they're better off, and they're pretty snobby too. They always wear madras. That's very clear in the book. They are always wearing madras shirts. The greasers, on the other hand, are usually in blue jeans, t-shirts, leather jackets. They always have hair grease in. They don't come from very great families most of the time, and again, financially just not very well off. So they are kind of at odds with each other because they are kind of on opposite sides of that financial spectrum sort of thing. And so all of the characters that we're following in this story are greasers. So we have Ponyboy, that is his name on his birth certificate. Again, we find that out a lot. Ponyboy Curtis, he lives with his older brothers, Dairy and Soda Pop, also actually his name. Their parents were killed roughly a year before in a car accident. And so in that time, Soda Pop has dropped out of high school and is working at a garage to try to just, make ends meet. And Dairy is working long hours as a roofer. And they are just trying to stay together, and there is a little bit of a fear that social services will come in and they'll be separated, so they are kind of on edge about that. We have Johnny Cade, who is one of the younger members of the group. So Ponyboy, the main character, is I think he's 14. Actually, I do know he's 14 because he says he's been 14 for a month at one point. So I feel like this is a theme already. I'm I think this is what happens. Actually, no, that's what happens because they make it very clear. So there are some points that are kind of driven home in this book. So Johnny Cade is around 16. So he's one of the younger members of the group. He just kind of looks scared all the time and he looks really young. And his parents are not great. His mom basically pretends he doesn't exist, and his dad beats him. So he's frequently staying with Ponyboy and his siblings. And Johnny was beaten up by some of the socs previously. So since that happened, he's become like even more skittish and nervous and scared like all the time. Which like he doesn't really fit like the definition of a greaser. Like all the times that he's described in the book is like just scared. So like he doesn't really fit that, like the vibe that the rest of them have. Anyway, we also have 2-Bit Matthews, who is very good at stealing things. We have Steve, who is Soda Pop's best friend, and then we have Dallas Winston. He is like a legit criminal. Like, some of them have done some sketchy things. I mean, I guess 2-Bit is a criminal because he steals things frequently, but like Dallas Winston has been in jail. He is like textbook definition, like a bad seed, but he is one of their group members. Early on in the book, we find out that it's just really not safe to walk around alone if you're a greaser. Hence the line that I quoted is the first line in the book when Ponyboy says that he was thinking about the movie he just saw and a way to get home because he is there by himself. If he walks, there's a possibility he's gonna get jumped by a soc group, and so he's thinking about like, how can I safely get home without running into some sort of trouble? He does anyway, and thankfully the entire gang comes running to rescue, and then that's kind of where we're introduced to all of the characters, and kind of this like long-standing hatred between the greasers and the socs. So a couple other things happen throughout the beginning of the story. Dallas and Johnny and Ponyboy go to the movies. They meet 2 girls, Cherry and Marcia. Sherry Valance goes by the nickname Cherry. And she and Ponyboy kind of hit it off. They start talking and they realize that even though they do come from 2 very different social classes, there really isn't all that much that's different about them. And I think that's kind of where they start to think about like like what does money like really mean? Like money and opportunity, and like at what point are you actually happy, sort of thing. So we find out, what a surprise, that Cherry's boyfriend Bob and Marcia's boyfriend Randy were the same socs who beat up Johnny. So now Johnny's looking, even if it's at all possible, he's looking even more terrified than he was before. And they just decide to walk the girls home, and then Bob and Randy get really drunk because they're like, hey, you took our girls from us, which isn't what happened. They didn't want to be around them because they were drunk. And they get more of their friends and they start beating up Johnny and Ponyboy. They dunk Ponyboy's head in a fountain, and Johnny realizes that he doesn't have a lot of options, so he pulls out his switchblade and he stabs Bob, and Bob dies. And that's the part that I was like, I don't know if I should say this in the spoiler-free summary, because like, it's pretty immediate, but it's kind of a big deal. So Johnny killed him, and they don't know what to do. So they go to the one person who probably knows how to handle this situation, and that is Dallas Winston. Like I said, legit criminal. And of course he's like, oh yeah, I got you. Here's a gun, here's some money. Go to this church, like hop this train, get off here, go to this abandoned church, stop on the hill, get enough supplies for the week. After a couple of days, I'll come like there and we'll figure things out together. So that's exactly what they do. They hop the train, they get off, I can't remember the name of the town. The church is on J Mountain, I remember that. They get enough supplies. Ponyboy dyes his hair, which is a really emotional thing for him because he really likes his hair. Johnny cuts his hair, so they're a little different looking than their pictures. And they are just kind of buying time up there. Ponyboy reads Gone with the Wind to Johnny, who isn't able to read all that well. They have some pretty deep discussions about it, and the poem by Robert Frost, but I don't actually know the name of it, the Nothing Gold Can Stay one, that's like a big thing throughout the book. And eventually Dally comes back and he's like, hey, I led the cops in a different direction. They think you're headed down to Texas. So that's good. Eventually Johnny's like, you know what? like, we need to go back. Your brothers are probably worried sick that you're gone. And like, we just need to face what happened. So before they can head back, they realize that the church they were staying in has caught on fire, which they had hinted at before because they said, like, they're very heavy smokers. So they're like, we should probably be careful, because if we don't put these out, like, this is gonna go up in flames so fast. And what a surprise, it did. So at the same time, there was a field trip of children to this abandoned church, which, questionable. Why would you take children to an old abandoned building? And some of them get stuck inside while it's on fire. So Johnny and Ponyboy rush in to save them. They're able to get the kids out. The rafters are like falling. Ponyboy jumps out the window, and Johnny's about to follow him when a beam like hits his back. And so Dally like knocks Ponyboy out and then goes in to get Johnny, and then they are all rushed to the hospital. And at that point, the guy who kind of found them, who I think was chaperoning the field trip, which I would be worried about him, taking, again, kids to an old abandoned church, he's like, okay, like, at this point, like, we all kind of know who you are, we know what happened, but, like, it doesn't make sense that you killed somebody and you also rescued these kids. Like, I feel like that's gonna, end up working in your favor, because what kind of, like, just hard, cold-blooded killer would also rescue kids out of a burning church? So he's kind of like, this is good news for you guys. Too bad Johnny's probably not gonna live to see it. So Ponyboy's totally fine. Dally is just slightly burned, and he does say, like, I wasn't trying to knock you out, I was just trying to, like, put the flames out that were on your back, but sorry. And Johnny is in, like, critical condition. He's burned quite heavily. He fractured some part of his back, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. So things are not looking good for him. And they all kind of head home to get ready for the Rumble. The Rumble is a skin-only fight between the socs and the greasers, and they are all there, all of the greasers, all of the socs. They have some other greaser gangs joining them, and they just beat each other up, and the greasers end up winning, which is awesome. And then Dally grabs Ponyboy, and he's like, come on, we gotta go see Johnny. And they go back to the hospital, and as soon as they get there, Johnny dies. And then Dally just kind of loses it, is so upset that somebody like Johnny, who was so good and kind, had such a horrible life with his parents, and now is dead, like, totally unfair. And he's like, it should have been me. Like, I've been out on the streets for how long? I've been in jail. I've done really questionable things. Like, why am I still here and he's not? So he kind of goes off the deep end. He has a gun with him that is not loaded. He makes that very clear. It is not loaded. And so he, like, runs off. Basically, he goes on, like, a suicide mission is essentially what happens. Like, he runs off. He robs a convenience store. He calls the guys and is like, hey, I robbed a convenience store. Can you come to the vacant lot and meet me there? And they're like, sure, we'll come help you. He runs into the vacant lot, stops under the streetlight, like, spotlight much. The cops are all there, and he pulls out his unloaded gun, and they all shoot him. And that's the end of Dallas Winston. Like, he got what he wanted in the end, I guess. So at the end of the story, Ponyboy goes to court. He testifies. Everything ends up being fine. He's allowed to stay with Dairy and Soda Pop. I don't think any charges are pressed against him. So at this point, like, he's gone through a lot. He's kind of distracted. So he's at school, and his teacher says, like, hey, like, you're failing. This isn't you. So if you can write a really good paper, I'll bump your grade up and we'll pass you. Because, you've gone through a lot and you've missed a lot of school. So Ponyboy decides to write about his experience. And just like the first line of the book, the last line of the book is, when I stepped out into the bright sunlight from the darkness of the movie house, I had two things on my mind: Paul Newman and a way home. And that is the end of The Outsiders. Now, as I said, I've read this book before. I loved it in high school. I've seen the movie so many times, and I swear they wrote the script like directly from the book. Like it quotes it so often. So one of the things that's really interesting about this book is the author, S.E. Hinton, wrote this when she was a teenager, and she is like often credited with kind of starting the YA genre, which is like super popular now. I read so much YA. So it was kind of cool now knowing that, to revisit this book, which was her first, and kind of see, you know, like how far it's come. That was a cool thing to experience because I didn't know that the first time I read it. I enjoyed it, I think mostly out of nostalgia. Some of the writing, I was like, what did I find appealing about this? Like there's a line where somebody says something and then Ponyboy goes like, "You ain't a wolfin'." And I just don't know who talks like that or whoever talked like that. So that was a little exaggerated. Plus some of the things seemed a little far-fetched. Like I said, what are the odds that you say, hey, this church will like up in flames like that, and then a group of small children are immediately taken there for a field trip? Like, it's a little sketchy. There are parts that are quite heartwarming, like the relationship that Derry and Soda Pop and Ponyboy all have, because they're all trying to understand each other in these new roles. Like Derry is very much the caregiver in this situation, so he's acting as a parent, and that hasn't, you know, for however long they've been alive, like I guess 13-ish years for Ponyboy, he and Derry have been brothers, and now Derry's acting more like a father, and like that's a hard adjustment. So there's a lot throughout the book of them trying to understand each other. So I did really like that. I also really liked just kind of, you know, showing that where you come from doesn't dictate who you become. And we have that through, you know, Johnny being this very kind and caring individual who comes from parents who are very unfeeling and uncaring. And in contrast with Bob, which I didn't mention very much, the soc that Johnny killed, they do mention that his parents were very, very giving, and you know, they kind of wanted him to have every opportunity and let him do whatever he wanted because they thought that was best for him, and that ended up leading to him, you know, making not great choices. So I think it kind of shows that, you know, money isn't the issue, it's where you come from and who you are and the people you surround yourself with. But you know, then there's moments like somebody saying Ponyboy's a 13-year-old kid and he's crying and saying, I'm 14, I've been 14 for a month. So we have both sides of it, cheesy dialogue and like kind of sweet stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a short book. It's 180 pages. I think I read it in about 2 hours. I recommend it. Like, check it out. It's a fun book, and then like go watch the movie. Like, it's an all-star cast, and it's just fun. You know, it's a fun watch and a fun read. So thanks so much for nerding out with me and reminiscing about the past and my love of The Outsiders. If you ever want to talk Ponyboy, I'm your girl. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.